So over the holiday season, I thought it would be a good idea for us to cover off just a few little iggly-piggly things that are going on in the industry in a few short little podcasts. And so this is going to be the first of them. And the topic I would like to introduce to you, gentlemen, is Adobe's new voice modeling software that they debuted towards the end of 2016 and what it might mean for the industry. So for those of you who aren't aware, Adobe have brought out, it's not for sale yet, but they've shown the development of some software that listens to about 20 minutes of a voice and can then have a script typed out, and it will repeat the script back in a Siri type of way, but using the voice that it's been shown. And I was interested from a voiceover's point of view, from both of you, what you thought that might mean for the industry and how you felt about that.
I'm getting into real estate, I've decided.
What, your voice or you?
Not me. No, seriously, it's an interesting concept, and we always sit there going, "Oh, it would never work." But someone will make something work. It's like the new Slate microphone that's out there now, which emulates U47s, U67s, or whatever, and it's really, really close. So, based on that theory, then I think we as talent should start talking to lawyers and finding out legally how we can copyright our voices. And how that will play out if somebody actually does.
That's a great point.
Because it does leave itself open, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I'm not that concerned about it for a couple of reasons. One, in spite of the fact that it looks fabulous, and they did such a great job with the presentation, and I will say the technology is fabulous. It's amazing what they've been able to do, but it's still limited. And it's pretty much like any other text-to-voice type thing. After a while, because it's recorded certain voice styles, and it emulates those styles, it's going to repeat that same style over and over and over and over again. So what happens is that after a while, there is you just get tired of listening to it.
Yeah, it becomes repetitive.
There's an ear fatigue.
Yeah.
Because it's the same emulation over and over and over again. And as well as I do as voice talents, that our clients want us to emphasize certain words. They want us to show up a word, a little love here and there, that sort of thing when we're doing. So it's not really that compelling for commercial work. It might work for e-learning or maybe some narrations. But for something that requires a bit of acting, it's just not going to work. The second thing that I see about it is that I think it's going to help the voiceover industry, and here's why. It's going to weed out the people that are doing voiceovers for hobbies, and those people that are charging extremely low rates because they're not going to be needed anymore. So if you're doing jobs for $50 for a commercial, or even $50 for an hour's worth of work, they don't need you anymore. But for talents who are charging more because they're able to act and be able to bring a little bit more to the table in the way of character and presentation and reality and nuances that can't be reproduced by a computer, it's going to help us because it separates us from the field. So I'm not too worried about it. I kind of look forward to it because I realize that it is going to hurt a lot of voice talents, but it's going to hurt the ones that are really just not in it to make a living, just in it for a hobby and having fun with it. And God bless them. I'm all for people doing that. I really am. It's just like there are movie stars and then there are local community theater actors. And God bless them. They're still actors. But for voice talents who do this as a hobby, they're probably not going to have much work available to them because of this technology. But I don't think it's going to affect the voice talents who are really depending on their voice acting abilities.
Let me take you 20 years down the track, since we're only at the beginning of the development of this software. Let me take you 20 years down the track, and I'm sitting in the studio. I've got your voice sample in front of me. And if I want a little more emphasis on a word, I press C# on my MIDI keyboard. And if I want it to speed up, I use the wheel. And if I wanted to slow down, I pull the wheel the other way. All of a sudden, I have some manipulation over your voice sample. How do you feel about it then?
You still have to have a bank of so many different styles and voice emulations in my particular voice, which means that you will have had to collect those. And for how long would you have had to collect those to get so many of those to be able to create exactly what you're talking about? Then consider that it would take a long, long period of time, probably years. Well, my voice changes through the years. And so you're going to have a voice from 5 years ago, and then all of a sudden a voice that's current, and then a voice from 10 years ago. I don't want to say it's not realistic. What I'm saying is that it is too complex to be able to recreate a human conversational sensibility that really communicates. It's almost like when I talk to somebody who is from another country, who's speaking English and speaking it very, very well, I can still pick up little nuances that tells me, oh, they're not natural born or they're not native speaker, not a native English speaker. They have little nuances there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me throw this out there. So I've got two thoughts here, Dan. Firstly, there's a famous Australian beer commercial for a beer called VB, which was voiced by a guy called John Mellion for years. Now, he died, and obviously the ad was so successful that the agency and the client was so worried about what was going to happen next. They actually went back to, it was days of quarter-inch tape. They went back to all the old session tapes, and the next two commercials were cut from outtakes and takes to put together a brand new commercial, basically. Really, and back in the day, I remember hearing about it back in the day. We're talking, 20 years ago now, AP? Easily.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
And so back in the day, that was cutting edge. So my question to you that comes from that is, and from what you were just saying then, is do you think or do you see a day where instead of you actually selling your voice, you're actually selling a disc or a file of components of your voice so I can use it? So these days we rent software. I can rent Pro Tools if I want to. So are you renting your voice to a client for a year? And there is a price attached to that.
I was about to say exactly the same thing.
It's actually already being done. For example, all of the GPS units, for example, Garmin is one of my clients, and they do the big GPS stuff, and they'll bring somebody in to do they have certain sentences and words and lines that they bring them in to do. This technology that Adobe is using was already being developed in a very primitive sense through these GPS companies. Yeah. And Siri is a good example of that also. So, you don't go in and say every street name and every turn, every curve,
Suburb and stuff.
You don't do that when you go in to do those GPS things. You go in and you say certain lines, certain words, certain sentences, and the computer takes that and cuts it up and uses it to create what you hear in the GPS unit now. The problem with that is that it doesn't know that certain words are pronounced differently in certain regions. And so the only way it would know that is if a human understood that and did it for that particular region. Well, yeah, that's possible to do that, but my God, it's still, the world is a small world, but it ain't that small.
Yeah, it's true.
And
it's
for example,
true.
we have a street here, a road here in the Kansas City area called Snaya Bar. Right. Well, if you see that written down, SNI-A-BAR, 9 times out of 10, people are going to say Snaya Bar.
I've got an example of that. I grew up in a suburb called Turramurra, which is an Aboriginal word. And the name of the street was Nulla Nulla, which is actually an Aboriginal throwing stick. And if you put it into the GPS, you get Nulla Nulla Street Turramurra.
Well, it's like where I live.
This
is on my GPS, which is a Garmin. There's a suburb here near Bells Beach where the big surf, events happen every year, called Torquay, which is an English, town that we've taken on here. The GPS calls it Torquay.
Right.
There
you go.
And then, I live on 3rd Avenue, or just off 3rd Avenue. So when you come out close, it goes, turn left on 3rd Avenue.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's
3rd
amazing.
Avenue.
3rd Avenue.
Yeah, so it's all like it's got everything's in the right, everything's there, but it's all in the wrong spot.
Yeah,
exactly.
So,
and that's part of, again, realizing that technology is, by the standards that Adobe is presenting, is by the emulator, is somewhat primitive, but it doesn't compensate for those changes. And here's the other thing: words that are spelled one way and pronounced a different way.
Yes.
We have a street, for example, that's Wornall. Say that for me. Wornall. How do you pronounce that?
I'd say Wornall. Yeah, Wornall.
I'd say Wornall.
It's Wornall. It's
Wornall,
spelled like an Nel. Wornall.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so, but the Garmin will say Wornall.
Yeah, right.
Or not necessarily Garmin, but a GPS will say Wornall.
Because it's taught that ALL means all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there you go. I just thought. Sorry, you go, Dan.
And then other words, normal speaking words like the word complex. Where you put the emphasis are two different things. Is it complex or is it complex?
Yes.
Yeah, well, see, Aussies probably fall on the complex,
But see, to us, a complex is a
place
a
to live.
location. Yeah,
yeah.
It's a building.
Yes.
And complex is something that's difficult.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So,
see,
but I have one.
We have the southern states, for an example, would be they'll say dance. I'm going to a dance, the very sort of more English pronunciation of it. Yeah, in the northern states, it's dance, that Aussie twang, the dance. So there you go. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting conversation to have. I mean, Adobe are probably on a winner in terms of money, because I'm sure there will be people out there who will be falling over themselves to get a hold of that sort of software. Whether it translates into a commercial problem for guys like you is yet to be seen.
I don't think it will. And I think, like, as I mentioned before, copywriting your voice, we can also sell, like Tomo does, a friend of ours who has a company called Kilohertz, where he sells, like, basically stems of
imaging stuff. Yeah.
Imaging stuff, yeah.
Stuff, yeah.
We could actually be selling stems of our voices to these companies,
yes,
and owning the copyright. So when they use them, we get a residual.
Interesting.
That's an interesting twist on that, Andrew.
Yeah. I bet.
I like
See
it.
if we can do something. We should talk to a lawyer. I mean, there's going to be someone, I guarantee there'll be someone, especially in America, that will go, yeah, I'll help you make that happen.
Well,
as long as I get a
Or-
cut. Yeah. You know, it'd be an interesting experiment for both of us, and Robbo could do this. If we had exactly the same microphones and preamps and just recorded our voices, I'd love to see it on a 3D analyzer. Because listening to your voice, and I could be completely wrong, and Robbo would know better, but even though we have different accents, there is something I can hear that's very similar in our voices. Do you think so, Robbo?
Yeah, there's similar tones to your voices. Yes, definitely. Absolutely.
One of the things, though, that's so unique, though, Andrew, your voice is consistent in a particular range. My voice is not. My voice will climb, I'll get up into ranges, up here, but your voice stays very steady, very consistent in a very unique range, which is, in my opinion, brilliant.
Thank you very much.
And my voice doesn't, because I think I've got to talk down in this range. I've got to speak right here because this is where I'm going to deliver. This is and they tell me, get out of it, because that's not, if I get stuck in it, it sounds monotonous, but yours doesn't. So I hate you for that.
I'm loving your hate.
Ain't that the truth?
Beautiful.
All right. Thanks, gents.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll be back with another one of our short tips.
The VO Radio Show is produced in the studios of Voodoo Sound. To polish your next audio production, check us out at voodoo-sound.com. Find professional voices simply all in one place. Realtimecasting.com, including me.